It arrives quickly, not loud, not overwhelming, just sharp enough to notice. A small tightening somewhere inside you, like a wince you don't show. You're still standing there, still listening, still part of the moment. But something has shifted. You feel it immediately, even if you can't explain why. This feeling doesn't come with a story attached. It doesn't announce itself with reasons. It's just a sudden awareness that you don't quite belong where you are, that your presence isn't being met, that something about you isn't wanted right now. Not rejected outright, just unnecessary. Your body reacts before your thoughts do. A slight pull inward, a subtle heat in the chest or throat. Your posture changes almost imperceptibly. You don't step back, but you stop leaning forward. You don't leave, but you stop arriving. It's a reflex, quiet and practiced. Inside this feeling, there's no drama, no urge to cry, no anger yet. Just a sting, clean, precise. It doesn't last long, but it leaves a mark. You replay the moment quickly. A glance that passed over you, a response that didn't come, a tone that shifted just enough to notice. You don't accuse anyone. You don't make it bigger than it is. You just register it. There's a strange clarity to this feeling. You're not confused about what happened. You felt it. That's enough. You don't need confirmation. You don't need proof. Your body already knows. You might tell yourself it's nothing, that you're overthinking, that it wasn't meant that way. And maybe all of that is true. But the feeling is still there, small and exact. It doesn't ask to be justified. It just exists. Inside this moment, you become very aware of yourself, of how you're standing, of how much space you're taking up, of whether you're welcome to stay. You don't panic. You don't rush to fix anything. You simply pause, holding yourself carefully, as if waiting to see if the space will make room for you again. This feeling doesn't linger loudly. It doesn't demand attention. It settles quietly, like a thin cut you cover and move on from. But for a brief moment, it's very clear. You felt unwanted. Not erased, not pushed away. Just sharply aware that you didn't quite fit where you were standing. It changes how you place yourself almost immediately. After that small sting lands, you adjust without thinking. You speak a little less. You wait a little longer. You check yourself before stepping in again. Not because anyone told you to move, but because something in you learned that your presence wasn't quite welcome in that moment. You become careful. You watch for cues. You measure timing. You don't interrupt. You don't insist. You start choosing the path that draws the least attention. It's not dramatic withdrawal. It's fine-tuning. You stay, but you soften your edges. You reduce the chance of feeling that sharpness again. This feeling makes you second-guess your instincts. You replay what you said, how you said it, whether you misread the room. You don't spiral. You just quietly recalibrate. Maybe next time you'll hold back. Maybe next time you'll wait to be invited. Maybe next time you'll take up a little less space. You notice how quickly you move into self-management. You smooth things over internally before they become visible. You don't ask for clarification. You don't check whether the feeling was real. You assume it's easier to adapt than to risk being unwanted again. So you adapt. It also changes how you relate to others in subtle ways. You keep things lighter. You offer less of yourself. You share the version that feels safest to receive. You don't lean into connection. You hover near it, ready to step back if needed. You don't pull away completely. You just don't reach as far. This feeling trains you to scan for acceptance before acting. You look for signs that you're welcome before you speak, before you stay, before you take up time. When those signs aren't clear, you default to caution. You don't want to misplace yourself again. Over time, this becomes familiar. You learn how to be agreeable, how to fit without friction, how to exist without causing discomfort. From the outside, it can look like ease. Inside, it feels like constant adjustment. None of this feels like rejection while it's happening. It feels like being considerate, polite, reasonable. You tell yourself you're just being aware of others. But underneath that awareness is the memory of that small, sharp feeling, the knowledge of how quickly it can arrive. So you move carefully. You stay alert. You keep yourself slightly out of the way, not because you don't want to be there, but because you don't want to feel unwanted again. It costs you ease first, the kind that lets you move through moments without monitoring yourself. After enough of these small stings, you stop relaxing into spaces. You stay aware of where you stand, how long you speak, how much you offer. Even when nothing is happening, you're already adjusting. That quiet vigilance takes energy, more than you realize at first. It costs you spontaneity. You hesitate before acting on instinct. You pause before sharing a thought. You second-guess whether your presence is wanted before you let yourself show up fully. Over time, those pauses add up. You stop moving freely. You become more deliberate, more measured, less yourself in small but steady ways. It costs you trust in your own place. You start to wonder if you're often misjudging situations, if you're stepping in where you shouldn't, if you're expecting too much space. You don't accuse anyone else. You turn the question inward. You assume the responsibility is yours to adapt better, to fit more cleanly, to not misplace yourself again. It costs you warmth and connection. You're still kind, still responsive, still present, but there's a guardedness that settles in. You don't open as easily. You don't lean forward as much. You keep part of yourself slightly back, ready to retreat if the room shifts. That distance protects you from the sting, but it also keeps you from feeling fully received. It costs you confidence in subtle ways, not the kind that shows up as insecurity, but the quiet assurance that you're allowed to be where you are, that you don't need to earn your place over and over. When that assurance erodes, you start carrying yourself as if your presence is conditional, as if it depends on being agreeable enough, quiet enough, easy enough. It costs you energy to keep recalibrating, to keep reading cues, to keep making yourself smaller before anyone asks. You don't collapse under it, you function, but the effort is constant. You're always just a little bit on alert, even in familiar spaces. Over time, this shapes how you see yourself. You begin to think of yourself as someone who doesn't quite fit, someone who needs to be careful, someone who shouldn't assume they're welcome. That belief doesn't shout, it settles. And once it's there, it quietly influences how much of yourself you allow into the world. Being unwanted in small moments doesn't take everything from you, but it takes enough to change how you move, how you connect, and how much space you let yourself occupy. And carrying that day after day is a cost that often goes unnoticed, even by you. Right now, you're still aware of that sharpness. It hasn't disappeared. You don't suddenly feel more secure or more certain of your place. The memory of being unwanted still lives close to the surface, but something about how you're holding it has shifted. You're not flinching from it in the same way. You're not bracing for it constantly. You're noticing it without immediately reorganizing yourself around it. You're here in the aftermath of the feeling, not the moment itself. The sting has passed, but the awareness remains. You can sense how quickly you usually make yourself smaller, how fast you adjust, how reflexive it's become. Seeing that clearly doesn't erase the habit, but it slows it down. It gives you a fraction of space between the feeling and the response. Your body feels steadier here. Not relaxed, not open, just steadier. You're not scanning the room as intensely. You're not rehearsing how to be acceptable. You're letting yourself occupy the space. you're already in without trying to justify it. That doesn't mean you feel welcomed. It just means you're not preemptively removing yourself. You're also not turning this into a story about what it means. You're not deciding that you don't belong everywhere. You're not concluding that something is wrong with you. You're letting the experience be specific instead of universal. This moment happened. It hurt. It doesn't get to define every other moment by default. There's a quiet dignity in that, in allowing yourself to feel the sting without shrinking around it, in not demanding that it be resolved before you move on. You're not pretending it didn't matter. You're also not letting it take over the shape of who you are. You're holding it carefully without letting it harden you further. You might still feel cautious. You might still choose your timing. You might still read the room. That's okay. This isn't about suddenly becoming fearless or unapologetic. It's about staying with yourself even when you feel unwelcome. About not abandoning your own presence the moment it feels risky to stay. Right now, you're here with the knowledge of how small and sharp that feeling can be. You're not rushing to fix it. You're not pushing it away. You're allowing it to exist without letting it dictate everything that follows. This is where you are now, still remembering, still carrying, still here.